Hey guys, Ryan here. Tonight we slip through time and find ourselves tramping up a dusty path toward Olympia in 756 BCE, where burning sun and sacred olive trees greet you like over-enthusiastic hosts. You probably won't survive this sunburn without a stack of aloe, by the way. Before we settle in, if this resonates with you, hit like and subscribe only if you're here for more of this vibe. Drop your location and local time in the comments so I know who's pulling an all-nighter with me. Gently lower the lights, switch on that soothing fan breeze, and come with me as we unwind into tonight's adventure. You trudge forward, sandals scuffing fine ochre dust as the outline of marble columns appears beyond the curve of a hill. The air vibrates with distant cheers, echoes of the 6th Olympiad already in full swing. A herd of goats munches nearby, sticky with fig juice, and you pause, inhaling that tang mixed with roasting lamb wafting from a festival hearth. Sweat beads at your temples, you smirk because sunscreen in 756 BCE was mostly crocodile dung and olive oil. The sanctuary of Olympia sprawls before you, its sacred precinct hemmed by plane trees and stony altars. To your left, the colossal statue of Zeus has yet to be carved, but wooden scaffolding hints at ambitions grander than daily gossip. Temples dedicated to Hera and Zeus stand sentinel, each fluted column catching sunlight like a gleaming spear. In the basin of a shallow fountain, pilgrims dip their hands, murmuring prayers for safe passage and victory. You duck under a linen canopy where local heralds shout the names of contestants. The chariot racers are already lining up, reins clutched tight, manes braided with crimson ribbons. You lean in, nose twitching at the oily scent of horse sweat and barley mash fed to the steeds. Mainstream fact: these ancient Olympic Games occur every 4 years, pausing war between Greek states so athletes and spectators can gather in peace. Fringe tidbit: some victors were crowned with celery crowns before olive wreaths became trendy, because apparently celery symbolized swiftness to some local gourmands. Moving deeper, you slip past decorated stalls where artisans display bronze tripods, painted amphorae, and carved idols. A young potter flips a shard to show you the earliest alphabetic carvings, the precursor to Greek letters that will one day shape epic poems. You run your fingers over the rough clay, the imprint of his fingernail is still visible. Some scholars disagree on whether this is the very first usage of the Phocian script in Elis, but you sense that dusty shard holds secrets older than any myth. A group of pilgrims from Aegina debates loudly about which deity bestows strength. You overhear an elderly woman whisper that Demeter once disguised herself as an old crone, demanding hospitality in exchange for fertile fields. Nearby, a boy juggles olives. Dropping one into the fountain as an offering, he beams when the water ripples. You crack a grin, thinking that child's comedic timing rivals any modern YouTube skit. As you ascend a small rise, the smell of singed incense curls around you. Priests in linen robes raise their staff-shaped wands in a muted procession, chanting a devotion to Zeus Olympius. Nearby altars carry fresh figs and goat cheese as offerings. You catch that one peculiar touch, tiny painted eye symbols etched into the pedestal's edge, said to ward off jealous spirits. Local farmers insist they ward off more than spirits, like nosy neighbors. Wandering past clustered oak groves, you find rustic benches carved from local timber. You sit, resting a wrist on a rough-hewn armrest, and survey the scene. Travelers from Messenia exchange news of bountiful harvests. A stranger jokes that his donkey once ran off with his tunic in Sparta, is still looking for it. Sunlight trembles through leaves, casting patchwork shadows on weathered stone. You notice a column base inscribed with the name of a victor who, legend claims, once fought off a wolf pack barehanded after a midnight feast, likely embellished, yet entertaining enough for tavern tales. Some argue that story originated centuries later, but you lean in, eager to believe in a werewolf-fighting wrestler. Drawing a breath scented with thyme and roasting game, you realize this place feels alive, a living tapestry of pilgrimage, competition, and divine reverence. You carefully tuck that olive wood fragment into your satchel, thinking it might make a charming desk paperweight back home. A breeze stirs the canvas banners flapping overhead, and you rise to press onward, heart thumping in sync with distant trumpet blasts signaling the start of the day's grand rituals. You slip past the fluttering banners and press into the heart of the grand arena, where the Sixth Olympiad's fierce contests unfold in a swirl of dust and cheers. The sun glints off polished shields and oil-slicked skin as athletes prepare for events that will test both body and nerve. You lean against a warm marble balustrade, sweat beading on your brow, and marvel at the sight of chariots lined up on the compacted earth, iron-shod hooves pouring at the ground, nostrils flared like tiny whirlwinds. A sharp blast of a bronze trumpet signals the chariot race's start. 4-horse teams surge forward, each driver clutching reins knotted at the wrist, voices raised in urgent commands. Your heart quickens. Mainstream records note that these races often ended in serious injury, making them some of the most perilous spectacles in Greece. Whispers ripple through the crowd that originally, this event may have been tied to funerary rites, an idea supported by local tomb reliefs showing horses racing toward looming tombstones, while others maintain it evolved as a display of city-state wealth and power. Dust plumes skyward as the chariots round the first bend at breakneck speed. You catch a flash of burgundy cloak belonging to a charioteer from Elis, his eyes set with calm determination. The Spartans, known for their military discipline, line up next, shields slung low across their horses' flanks. You almost wince when a leather yoke snaps under tension, sending one wheel tipping dangerously. Spectators gasp in unison, but the driver regains balance with graceful agility, the horse's hooves thundering past you like war drums. A sudden lurch throws stones toward the judge's platform. You instinctively step back, heart pounding, as the damaged chariot skids sideways. In that split second, you imagine the worst, but the driver leans hard into the harness, and the horses respond, muscles rippling beneath sleek hides. A collective sigh ripples across the stands when he steadies the course and surges ahead. You exhale, remembering tales that winners once dedicated their spoils to gods in thanks for safe passage, an offering now likely olive wreaths instead of bronze statues. When the race ends, the victor is announced with a rhythmic beat on a bronze drum. You join the wave of applause as the charioteer raises his arms, legs smeared with dust and sweat. He's crowned with wild celery garlands, a custom said to have begun because celery's quick growth symbolized speed, though by now most champions prefer olive leaves for their fragrance. You tuck a stray celery leaf between your fingers, its stem curving like a small bow. Next comes wrestling, its square ring bordered by wooden beams where eager onlookers press close. Two athletes, bodies gleaming, approach. One, a lanky youth from Elaea, flexes lean muscles. The other, a stockier opponent from Miletus, cracks his shoulders with practiced ease. You observe every tendon and sinew, aware that such contests celebrate strength and strategy in equal measure. Submerged in anticipation, you inhale the tang of sweat mixed with the sharp scent of crushed olive paste used to reduce chafing. They clasp hands, foreheads almost touching, eyes locked. You sense the centuries-old tension in the ritual, a dance of give and take. With a swift pivot, the Elean executes a clean throw, sending his adversary to the soft sand below. You cheer with the crowd, marveling at the athlete's precision. Alongside you, someone murmurs that as wrestling techniques evolve, some trainers teach athletes to subtly manipulate their opponent's joints, methods whispered only among select circles, sparking debate about fairness. A horn signals a break, and you wander to a stall offering spiced barley cakes drizzled with honey. You taste the warm sweetness, the grain's nutty texture grounding you. Recycling vessels is common here. The vendor hands you a shallow clay dish that he'll refill for the next customer, prioritizing thrift over luxury. Soon, the call goes out for pancration, a no-holds-barred contest blending wrestling with striking, where only biting and eye-gouging remain forbidden. You press closer, pulse thrumming as the fighters enter the dust-flecked ring. One competitor wraps his arms around the other's torso, driving him backward, muscles coiling like ropes under tension. The crowd exhales as the two lock in a brutal clinch. Every grunt carries the weight of their training. Fragments of local gossip drift your way. Some patrons insist pancration originated among shepherds who defended flocks from wolves, while others credit military instructors seeking to train soldiers in unarmed combat. Both theories persist, each with its own set of champions and scholars citing ancient tomb art as evidence. You imagine those painted vases as living documents, silent storytellers of skirmishes long past. The fighters break apart, sweat and sand plastering their bodies. A sudden flurry of punches lands with dull thuds, a whisper-quiet testament to controlled power. You flinch at a solid elbow strike, only to see the fallen man tap out, raising a hand in concession. Relief and awe mingle in the hush that follows, before applause washes over the arena like a wave. As the dust settles, you notice sculptors perched on low stools, rendering charcoal sketches of the battered yet triumphant bodies. Their quick strokes capture frozen moments, muscles mid-expansion, veins standing out like braided cords. These sketches will inspire stone carvers centuries later, who aim to immortalize human form at its peak. You pause, touching the cool marble railing, imagining your own reflection etched in eternal stone. A final trumpet blast marks the end of organized contests for now. Victors cross the arena floor to collect amphorae filled with olive oil, a reward meant to fuel both gymnasium rituals and daily grooming. You watch a champion cradle his prize, oil gleaming like liquid gold in the afternoon light. Nearby, children chase one another, cloth strips tied to knees in playful mock races. You wander toward the stands, where an announcer proclaims upcoming foot races under the setting sun. He mentions that sprinters will run nude to honor the gods, a practice scholars debate as either a tribute to purity or a practical choice for freedom of movement. You laugh silently, picturing yourself dashing across a modern track with no tunic to weigh you down. Your mother would never approve, but here it feels like an act of devotion. As you leave the arena, dust swirling in your wake, you tuck a fresh celery sprig into your satchel alongside the olive wood fragment. The roar of the crowd fades, replaced by the distant bleating of sheep huddled in cool groves. You inhale deeply, savoring the lingering excitement and the scent of crushed leaves and sweat. The 6th Olympiad's fierce contests have left your pulse racing, and you realize that this ancient spectacle breathes life into myths and memories alike, an echo of human striving that will resonate across millennia. You step off the well-trodden path and wander into a sunlit Arcadian village, its alleys humming with the rhythm of everyday life. The air is warm, laced with the scent of fresh sheep's wool, sharing space with briny salt carried in from coastal traders. You slip through an open archway carved from limestone, and immediately the chatter of merchants beckons you like an old friend whose accent you almost recognize. Every voice blends into a gentle hum, women bargaining for olives, farmers weighing barrels of honey, and a grizzled fisherman discussing that morning's catch, which he swears included a mysterious silver-scaled fish no one has ever seen before. You pause at a low wooden table where a trader from Sikyon lays out glistening black olives. His fingertips are stained purple, and he offers you one, telling you it's the secret to strong bones. Popular belief says Pythagoras favored these very olives before lecturing his students. In reality, Pythagoras might have preferred legumes, but that doesn't stop villagers from claiming those olives hold magical properties. A mainstream fact drifts through your mind: ancient Greek city-states, or polis, often held weekly markets in their agora, where citizens and foreigners alike traded goods and news. The bustle here feels timeless, as if every spoken word is an echo of arguments over democracy to come. You glide past a group of women crouched beside a trough of wool being washed in soapy spring water. Their arms move in synchronized circles, agitating the fleece until suds form a creamy froth. You lean in, inhaling the sweet scent of soap made from animal fat and ash, nothing like the minty stuff back home. A fringed tidbit surfaces. Some families sprinkle crushed rosemary into the wash to keep wool free of mites, believing the herb wards off not only insects but also restless spirits that lurk in damp basements. You run your fingers along a damp fleece, feeling its soft resilience, and imagine a future scholar debating whether that rosemary trick derived from early folk medicine or pure superstition. Around the corner, rough-hewn salt blocks glimmer under the midday sun. A young boy hefts one onto a scale, balancing it against a stack of copper coins that glint like fireflies. You remember reading that salt was so valuable in Greece it was sometimes used as payment for soldiers, hence the word salary centuries later. You smile at the thought that your bank account almost never lacks salt allowances. There's a murmur among salt merchants about a new salt mine discovered near the Gulf of Corinth. Some claim the mine's salt flakes are whiter than newly fallen snow. Others argue it's simply more reflective under the Aegean light. Further down the alley, you encounter a small pottery workshop where shards of broken amphorae litter the dusty floor. A potter seated on a low stool picks up a shard, smoothing the edges, then sketches a new design for wine storage. His apprentice hammers shards into a mosaic decorating a large, empty vessel. You crouch beside them to watch, intrigued by the apprentice's careful mosaic of mythological scenes: Poseidon rising from foam, a dolphin twisting through waves. Scholars continue to debate whether these everyday mosaics influence later epic poetry. You whisper that you'll keep an eye out for poetic dolphins in future Homeric verses. The village well stands at the crossroads of two main alleys, crowned by a carved limestone relief of Athena holding an owl. You cup your hands and drink the cool water, tasting minerals that remind you of mountain streams. A local farmer squats beside the well, sharpening his sickle for the coming harvest. He looks up and nods, wiping sweat from his brow. You ask about the harvest, and he says barley crops promise a generous yield this year. Good news for bakers planning tomorrow's grain offerings to Demeter. Some villagers credit a special lunar phase for the bounty, while others insist it's the result of meticulous crop rotation mastered over generations. Every so often, a stray goat wanders through the marketplace, nibbling stray scraps of fruit and weaving between feet. Villagers hardly bat an eyelid, they simply guide it back with a piece of flatbread and a gentle shoe. You remember that Aristotle once mentioned goats' curious behavior when describing animal psychology, and you wonder if you'll ever write a treatise about wayward goats stealing olives. As the sun climbs higher, you duck under a linen awning to escape the heat. Beneath it, a herbalist stall is cluttered with clay jars labeled with chalked names: thyme, sage, pennyroyal. She presses a spoonful of crushed pennyroyal into your hand and tells you it soothes stomach cramps. You rub it between your fingers, the pungent earthiness fills your nostrils. A passing monk from a distant sanctuary murmurs that pennyroyal also wards off bad dreams, a belief some modern scholars suggest hints at early notions of aromatic therapy. Nearby, a strolling minstrel plays a lyre, its strings humming a mellow tune that drifts through the market like a soft breeze. His song recounts the tale of a hero who once saved a village from a rampaging boar. Villagers pause, tapping feet in appreciation, and some join in with muted claps. You close your eyes and let the melody wash over you, picturing that boar's tusks glinting under moonlight. The minstrel's next verse teases that the hero sniffed out the creature's lair by following the scent of truffle mushrooms, a detail that seems as fanciful as finding a silver-scaled fish in your lagoon. You wander toward a cluster of taverns where clay mugs of watered-down wine clink against wooden tables. The heady aroma of spiced wine soaks into the air, mingling with the laughter of villagers recounting news from neighboring polis. You catch mention of an upcoming assembly debating whether to send envoys to Argos or Corinth. Scholars debate whether such alliances were driven by genuine political camaraderie or veiled attempts at territorial expansion, but here it sounds like people simply seeking new trading partners. A weathered musician beside a large potted olive tree taps a pair of wooden castanets, keeping time as villagers dance a few simple steps with rhythmic grace. You're invited to join. You laugh at your clumsy footwork but follow along, noticing how each movement ties to agricultural rhythms, the rise of the sun, the sowing of seeds, the harvest cycle. It feels less like performance and more like communion with the land. As afternoon shadows lengthen, you stroll toward a small shrine tucked between market stalls. Offerings of grain and oil rest before a carved stone figure of Hermes, patron of travelers and merchants. You lightly press an obol into the offering bowl, whispering a quiet wish for safe passage. A passerby comments that Hermes once stole Apollo's cattle disguised as a tortoise, a story that still delights local children during festival retellings. Finally, you find a shaded bench carved from an ancient oak trunk. You sit back, releasing tension as the market's bustle fades into a distant murmur. A soft breeze stirs the linen awnings overhead, carrying the faint scent of rosemary and toasted barley. You roll your shoulders, feeling grounded in a world that balances commerce, community, and divinity with effortless harmony. Today's market scene will echo in your dreams, a vivid tapestry of barter, music, and the everyday magic that pulses through these Greek alleys. You slip into a shaded pavilion where clusters of elder aristocrats have gathered, their linen chitons rustling like dry reeds in a breeze barely stirring the summer heat. Amphorae of deep red wine sit in carriers carved from oak, their necks sealed with pitch and olive leaves. You settle on a low stone stool, the marble cool beneath your fingertips, and listen as they lean forward, voices low but insistent. The boundary markers lie the wrong way. One elder from Elis begins, swirling wine in his cup until it sloshes over the edge in a slow, crimson arc. You catch the tang of fermented grapes mixed with wood smoke, and you find yourself craving a sip, only to remember your stomach revolts at anything stronger than diluted honey water. Nearby, another magnate from Pisa taps his cup thrice on the stone floor, a signal that the conversation has turned serious. Mainstream fact: Greek aristocrats often held power through land ownership and lineage, with disputes over boundary stones sometimes erupting into skirmishes between rival clans. The elder squints at a weathered clay tablet laid out on a low table, its faded inscriptions marking fields planted with barley and vineyards yielding pungent grapes. The tablet's edges are worn smooth by decades of handling, each groove a testament to past compromises and broken oaths. A fringe tidbit surfaces as you watch. Some clans believed that burying a newborn's umbilical stump under a border marker sanctified the claim, tying the child's spirit to the land forever. You shudder despite the gentle breeze. Imagining toddler ghosts clinging to fence posts is not what you signed up for on this time travel journey. One aristocrat, drumming his long fingers on the tabletop, proposes an alliance sealed by marriage, his eldest daughter to the young son of the Pisatan leader. The Pisatan nods, murmuring about securing fertile plains along the Alpheus River. You note the parallel to modern political marriages. Power still seems to run on family ties and the occasional awkward toast. Some debate remains about whether these alliances truly fostered lasting peace or simply delayed bloody vendettas. You imagine local bards composing epic laments about broken promises rather than heroic feats. As the wine flows, conversation meanders to military obligations. A Corinthian envoy recounts recent drills in hoplite formations, shields locked, spears angled like deadly porcupine quills. He gestures expansively, nearly toppling his amphora. You duck instinctively, heart racing, as red liquid arcs toward your sandals. You can't help but grin at the near miss. Modern militaries could learn crowd control from Greek parties. Natural light filters through carved latticework, casting geometric patterns across togas and tunics. You lean in to overhear a spirited debate. Should they pledge troops to support Argos against Messene in return for shed salt rights? Salt, you recall, is practically liquid currency, another mainstream fact that underscores its strategic importance in ancient economies. A murmur rises that Messene's salt pans produce crystals as large as amphora corks, prized by cooks and traders alike. A wizened Giniton leans forward, voice soft but firm. We must consider the omens. He raises a folded linen cloth that once covered sacrificial offering, revealing a pattern of chicken entrails that looks suspiciously like a boar. The group leans closer, nostrils flaring at the pungent scent of bile and herbs. You wrinkle your nose. Later, you'll find out this particular ritual is called extispicy, and some argue it was mere theatre rather than genuine divination. You whisper that the entrails resemble yesterday's roasted pork, prompting a few stifled smiles. The elder from Pisa pours another cup and recounts a more practical concern: water rights along a contested spring that trickles through olive groves. He argues that controlling the spring secures irrigation for orchards yielding prized black figures. You imagine modern water treaties, endless legal wrangling and drone surveillance, and you feel oddly comforted that humans have always wrangled over resources. Someone cracks a wry comment about olive oil futures, comparing them to barley stocks. The group erupts in quiet laughter. You join in, wondering whether futures markets will ever be less complicated. A scholar among them warns that linking olive yields to political leverage could spark resentment. Others counter that wealth built on oil presses cannot be ignored. There's still discussion about whether early Greek economies functioned more like modern capitalist ventures or communal grain exchanges, but here it all seems driven by the same blend of ambition and necessity. A servant in a loose white tunic moves between the elders, offering small plates of freshly baked flatbread drizzled with pine resin and sprinkled with sesame seeds. You accept one, the resin's piney bite catching you by surprise. As you chew, you notice the flicker of pipe torches along the pavilion's edges, though the sun remains high, an odd early evening ritual to herald nocturnal discussions. Tonight's talks promise to stretch past sunset, they say, much like corporate board meetings you've attended back home, minus the air conditioning and with more singing. The conversation shifts to sacred traditions. Will their pact require joint offerings at the next festival of Zeus Olympius? The elder from Megara insists that shared sacrifices strengthen bonds, while the Corinthian cautions that joint ceremonies risk capitalizing on, and potentially offending, local cults. You recognize shades of modern religious diplomacy, debates over sacred sites and cultural appropriation swelling just as they do 2 millennia later. A sudden breeze rattles the lattice screens, carrying the scent of beeswax candles and crushed basil. You close your eyes, savoring the moment, then refocus as the Pisatan opens another amphora, this one containing honeyed wine infused with saffron. You inhale its heady fragrance, recalling that saffron crowns were reserved for victors in poetic contests. You sip cautiously, warmth spreads through your chest, loosening your tongue. You find yourself imagining which gods you'd bribe for favorable omens, a cheeky thought that brings a few chuckles among the assembly. Toward the end, talk wanes to musings on record-keeping, which alliance tablet should be archived at the Temple of Apollo, and who will carve it in marble rather than clay for posterity. They fret over weathering, engraving quality, and the risk of future rulers dismissing faded clay tablets as rumors. You scribble mental notes, ancient public relations certainly hinged on durable messaging. Scholars still debate how many decrees have been lost to poor archival practices, but you suspect far more than survive today. As the elders finish their last drafts, you pull back, rising from your stool. The final echo of clinking cups lingers in the warm air. You tuck your notes away, surprised by how much tribal politicking feels like scrolling through tomorrow's headlines. Carrying a whiff of pine resin and saffron wine, you step out of the pavilion, eyes adjusting to the afternoon glare. Beyond, olive trees stretch toward rolling hills, silent witnesses to every debate and oath sworn beneath their branches. With alliances forged, promises made, and clay tablets destined for sacred archives, you move on, heart humming with the echo of power and the promise of peace, or the prelude to the next conflict. You slip beneath a canopy of woven reeds into the inner sanctum of a modest shrine, where tendrils of smoke curl upward from braziers of fragrant resin. The midday sun peeks through cracks in the stone walls, illuminating swirling patterns of ash on flagstone floors. A hush envelops you, punctuated only by the soft murmur of priests chanting invocations to Zeus, Hera, and lesser nymphs whose names you've barely learned this morning. The scent of burned laurel and cedar mingles with smoldering frankincense, an aroma so heady it clings to your lungs like a secret. A tall priest in a white linen robe raises his polished bronze staff, its tip shaped like a twin snake head. He strides barefoot across crushed red brick, each step releasing puffs of smoke underfoot. You watch him anoint the base of a miniature altar with myrrh, the viscous oil pooling around tiny clay statuettes. Mainstream fact, incense offerings were central to Greek worship, believed to carry prayers skyward on curling plumes of smoke. You inhale deeply, imagining those same rituals echoing in grand temples centuries later. As you edge closer to the flickering flames, a soft voice whispers from the shadows. A female devotee steps forward, her hair bound with strips of saffron-dyed cloth. She holds out a shallow dish of barley grains dyed a deep purple, a fringe tradition said to have originated when a local oracle claimed the king's daughter dreamt of purple fields stretching to the horizon. Villagers took that dream as divine approval and dyed their offerings accordingly. You lift a single grain between your fingers, its vivid color seems almost too bright for mortal hands. Beyond the main altar, a low shrine enshrines symbols of Hermes, a winged sandal and a tiny lyre carved from ivory. A young acolyte kneels before it, arranging coins and honeycomb, muttering a plea for safe travels. You catch the names of more obscure spirits murmured under his breath: Agathos Daimon, the benevolent spirit of the household, and Erinus, a restless force of retribution. Some scholars debate whether these minor deities were absorbed into larger cults or maintained independent followings, but here they feel palpably present. Suddenly, a procession emerges from a hidden corridor, for torchbearers in saffron robes, each carrying a bronze brazier topped with burning juniper. Their slow, rhythmic steps echo like distant thunder in the hush. The flicker of flames casts their faces in alternating light and shadow, revealing serene expressions carved in flickering gold. You notice crude frescoes on nearby walls depicting earlier rites, animals bound on altars, maenads dancing in frenzied circles, and priests wielding sacrificial knives. You swallow hard, remembering that some rituals once involved animal sacrifices whose blood-stained altars read, though modern worship prefers symbolic cakes and libations instead. The lead priest raises his hands, and the chanting softens to a melodic hum. He calls upon Zeus Ctesios, protector of households, and Hera Teliae, guardian of marriage. You press a palm to the cool wall, feeling the slight indentation of a hoof imprint. Legend says a canny ox once bolted through the shrine walls to escape sacrifice, leaving hoof impressions forever revered by farmers seeking mercy for their herds. You can't resist tracing the groove, imagining that stubborn animals escape as proof of divine compassion or perhaps cheeky bovine mischief. The hum fades, and the priest gestures toward a small aperture in the far wall, where villagers once slipped love tokens, shards inscribed with hearts, entwined names, and little phallic carvings meant to kindle passion. A fringe custom suggests women who placed these tokens would dream of future husbands, but some locals whispered that tokens sometimes backfired, summoning cursed love affairs that ended in ruin. You lean in, hoping for romantic advice, and nearly drop the barley grain in your hand. At the shrine center stands a circular altar carved into the hearth, its rim etched with scallop shells symbolizing Aphrodite's birth from sea foam. A cluster of priests surrounds it, stirring a golden-hued liquid in a bronze cauldron. They ladle it into clay cups, wine blended with mint leaves and a single tear of frankincense resin. You accept a cup, papyrus thin rim chipping beneath your thumb. The liquid glides over your tongue, sweet and cooling, with an herbal bite that tickles your throat. They claim this draught brings clarity of mind before divination. Some modern healers attribute its effect to mint's mild antiseptic qualities, though devout followers insist it's purely miraculous. As you sip, a small group of women draped in violet robes files in through a side door. They whisper fervent prayers to Demeter and Persephone for fertile fields and safe childbirth. You watch one place a newborn's umbilical stump beneath a vase of pomegranate seeds, an archaic practice believed to bless both child and harvest. Some scholars question whether this custom predated Greek colonization or derived from Minoan rituals on Crete, but here it thrives in a quiet corner of the shrine. A distant clang signals the arrival of a new delegation, young men carrying wicker cages with white doves fluttering inside. The lead youth scatters seed on the floor, the birds hop and coo before one releases itself through the open roof, spiraling skyward in a swirl of feathers. The remaining birds are released over olive trees planted near the altar, symbolizing peace and the soul's ascent. It's said that if a bird circles the altar 3 times before flying, the supplicant's wish will be granted. You close your eyes and picture the dove's graceful arcs, wishing it well on its journey. Before you can reflect further, a thunderous chant erupts from beyond the shrine's entrance. You step outside to see a crowd gathered beneath towering cypress trees, cheering as a masked actor performs a short drama honoring Dionysus. Red ribbons stream from his staff, and he stomps grapes in a large vat, spattering deep purple juice. You hear that this open-air spectacle parallels the secret rites you just observed, public celebration versus private devotion. As evening light softens the courtyard, you linger near a low altar dedicated to Hestia, goddess of hearth and home. A single flame burns steadily, never extinguished, symbolizing communal unity. You crouch and place your hand on the cool stones, imagining that when you return home, you might light a candle in memory of this eternal flame. It feels fitting, linking past to present in one small, steady glow. At the shrine's threshold, you turn back for a final glance. Incense smoke drifts skyward, tracing invisible paths among the trees. The scents linger, laurel, cedar, mint, woven into your clothes and hair. You step out into a courtyard where lanterns are being lit, casting a gentle glow on painted reliefs of gods and mortals locked in myths of love, war, and sacrifice. Your senses reel from the intensity of sounds, sights, and smells, each write a delicate thread in this tapestry of ancient devotion. Exhaling softly, you realize the shrine's power doesn't lie solely in grand temples or epic poems, but in every whispered prayer, every grain of barley offered, every swirl of smoke rising heavenward. This is worship in its most intimate form, accessible only to those willing to step off the beaten path and listen to the quiet voices of the divine. You slip into a narrow courtyard behind a row of stately homes and catch sight of the hidden world of slaves and metics, those who live at the margins of Greek society yet hold its machinery together. The afternoon light slants through shuttered windows, casting stripe patterns on dusty stone. You pause at a low door propped open by a chunk of clay, revealing a linseed-scented workshop where an artisan from Phocaea shapes amphorae with tireless hands. His brow is furrowed, and clay sticks to the grooves of his calloused palms. Nearby, his wife, also a metic, weaves wool into a thick blanket destined for a distant market. You step closer, noting the rhythmic slap of clay against a spinning wheel. A mainstream fact drifts through your mind. Metics, resident foreigners, paid a special tax called the metoikion and were barred from owning land, yet they could engage in trade, crafts, and industry. You nod in understanding, recognizing that this second-class status provides opportunity amid restrictions, a dynamic echoing in modern guest worker programs. A fringe tidbit surfaces as the potter deftly carves a curious motif. Some metics are said to sprinkle their clay with crushed herbs to bring luck in foreign lands, convinced the fragrance wards off the evil eye when their goods cross borders. Beyond the workshop, you spy a group of field hands hoeing furrows in a terraced garden irrigated by flowing springs. Their sun-worn faces tilt up when they see you, and one woman offers a slice of stale barley bread she's brought for lunch. You accept, her hands rough like bark, and bite into the dense loaf, tasting earth and salt. She explains that slaves receive minimal rations of barley and olives, often supplemented by what they can glean at day's end. Scholars debate whether these allowances fostered solidarity among workers or bred resentment, and in this hushed stretch of earth, you sense both resilience and quiet despair. From the far corner comes the bark of an overseer's whip, thin leather coiling through the air but landing with little more than a sharp hiss. The slaves flinch, voices dropping to murmurs as they continue their tasks. You can't help but flinch yourself, remembering that freedom hinged on the whim of masters. Nearby, a young boy no older than 7 sweeps animal droppings from the courtyard, his tunic stained and patched. Rumor says some aristocrats send their illegitimate children to live as slaves to keep inheritances intact, a fringe practice whispered only in hushed tones. A narrow alley leads you past woven baskets filled with laundry soaking in scented water. Slavery in ancient Greece was diverse: household servants, mine workers, farm laborers, and even skilled artisans. One basket overflows with fine linen still soft from oil and scent baths. A matron's maid glances up, offering a glimmer of a smile before returning to her work. You wonder whether she dreams of a life beyond service, and you sense that each scrubbed stroke carries both hope and resignation. At a weathered door, you overhear hushed voices inside a small chamber. 2 slaves share a meal of figs and goat cheese, speaking in a dialect unfamiliar to local citizens, perhaps Phrygian or Lydian. You hover quietly, catching fragments. One laments missing their homeland's festivals, the other vows to save enough to buy freedom someday. Mainstream fact: manumission, granting of freedom, was possible, often documented on terracotta tablets witnessed in court. Freed slaves could become citizens' equals, though social prejudice lingered. You breathe that in, imagining the joy and uncertainty those words once carried. Pressing on, you find a courtyard where Metic children practice reading on wax tablets, their styluses scratching the thin surface. They giggle as mistakes are scraped away and wax re-smoothed. You kneel beside them, tracing a few Greek letters beneath your finger. A fringe tidbit surfaces. Some teachers are said to use honey smears on wax to coax reluctant learners, an edible bribe that leaves more sticky fingers than scholarly mastery. Beyond the children's play, a stone arch leads to modest chambers where non-citizen soldiers train. The clang of wooden shields echoes as they spar with practice spears. Metic hoplites provide vital manpower to city-states, though barred from political office. A grizzled sergeant shouts corrections: guard your flank, keep your shield raised. His voice is firm yet carries pride. He speaks of battles where Metic regiments turned the tide, stories that citizens often omit from victory odes. You pat the shield worn smooth by countless drills, noting carved initials etched into its rim, a silent testament to individual lives hidden beneath communal triumphs. As dusk approaches, lanterns flicker in low-ceilinged quarters housing domestic slaves. You peer through latticed windows to see them cleaning pottery, sweeping floors, and preparing simple stew for the household table. One young woman pauses to tune a small lyre, her melody soft and melancholy. You press your ear to the lattice, letting her song seep into your bones. It's a lullaby for her absent child, you think, or perhaps a whispered prayer to a far-off mother. In the courtyard center, an elderly Metic storyteller beckons a circle of children. He recounts tales of distant homelands, of mountain lakes and valley winds where freedom tasted like honeysuckle. The children's eyes shine with longing, absorbing every word as if it were manna. Scholars wonder whether such oral traditions preserved lost dialects and customs. Here, under the hush of fading light, they preserve flickers of identity against erasure. Finally, you find yourself at a low wall overlooking the tiled roofs of citizen homes. Slate and terracotta mix in a patchwork that glows pink in the dying sun. Slaves climb to higher vantage points to fetch water from a rooftop cistern. You watch one woman balancing a clay jug on her head, her posture unerring and dignified. You wonder whether she feels pride in her skill or weary of unseen burdens. As the sky deepens to purple, you step away from the wall, carrying the echoes of whispered languages, resilient hands, and quiet songs. The hidden world of slaves and metics pulses with life, grounded in hardship but threaded with hope. You pad the olive wood fragment in your satchel and head back toward the bustling main road, heart heavy with empathy and admiration for lives lived out of sight but essential to the ancient polis's beating heart. You press onward, guided by the soft clatter of styluses ticking against wax, until you arrive at a sunlit courtyard dominated by low tables strewn with pottery shards, ostraka, and wax tablets damp from recent erasures. Scribal apprentices cluster around a seasoned scribe who dips a reed pen into black ink made from soot and gum. You step closer, catching the tang of iron gall and the faint sourness of beeswax. The scribe's sandals squeak on worn stone as he dips the pen again, sketching angular symbols onto a fresh piece of unfired clay. A mainstream fact enters your mind. By 756 BCE, the Phoenician script had been adapted into early Greek alphabets, giving rise to letter forms that would eventually shape epic poetry and civic decrees. Here, you watch the nascent alphabet in action, Aleph curving into Alpha, Beth straightening into Beta, each character a bridge between oral tradition and permanent record. The scribe clears his throat and begins reading aloud from a newly inscribed decree. Citizens have gathered to hear it, a proclamation granting sanctuary to supplicants at the Temple of Apollo. His voice echoes off colonnades, giving weight to each syllable. A fringed tidbit dances to the surface. Some local poets whisper that scribes originally used oyster shells to smooth clay before etching letters, believing the shell's origin in the sea lent words a tide of divine inspiration. You glance at scattered shells clustered near a water trough and wonder if they were indeed left there for talismanic use. You wander among the apprentices, who lean so close to their work they sometimes smear ink across small fingers. One boy, with charcoal-streaked cheeks, practices the new phi character on a wax tablet, his stylus carving the loop with tentative precision. He pauses, erases a shaky stroke, then attempts it again, arcing the line like a suspended river. A girl beside him gently taps her tablet with a tiny mallet to level the wax surface, preparing it for fresh inscribing. Scholars still ponder whether wax tablets were primarily for drafting state documents or simply for teaching children basic literacy. Here, both uses echo side by side. Behind them, a small group debates the shape of the letter omega. An earnest young apprentice argues that its circular form mirrors the setting sun, symbolizing endings and transitions. His friend counters that the simpler O suffices, a remnant of earlier scripts where efficiency trumped symbolism. You smile at their earnestness, recalling how centuries later, poets would choose words for their shapes as much as their sounds. Whether these debates influence later language evolution remains a point of contention, but in this courtyard, the conversation feels alive. A low table displays an array of finished ostraka, each bearing names scratched by citizens voting to exile troublemakers. You pick one up, tracing the name etched into its surface, an anonymous ballot cast in the shadow of democracy's birth. Fragments of political dissent cling to these shards, voices seeking to banish rivals rather than draw swords. It's striking to realize that the same letters you admire for poetic epics also served as tools of civic reckoning and sometimes petty revenge. As you move toward a stack of amphorae used to store ink, you notice scratched lines at the bottom, practice strokes left by scribes testing reeds before diving into official inscriptions. A fringe detail flutters into view. Rumor holds that some scribes would dip their pens into village wine vats first, to make the ink more fluid and the letters more graceful. You dip a finger into a small ceramic jar and taste the residue, bitter with iron, but smooth enough to imagine its appeal. Nearby, the master scribe collects finished tablets and sorts them into wooden chests bound with bronze hinges. He explains to a curious apprentice that clay tablets destined for permanent archive will be sun-baked until rock-hard, then stored in temple libraries. Others, meant for temporary records, will be left soft for eventual erasure. You reflect that this dual approach to permanence and ephemerality resembles modern draft and published documents, proof that scribes 2 millennia ago grasped the value of provisional ideas. A trio of metic women approaches, carrying large baskets of reeds harvested from a nearby riverbank. They bow respectfully to the scribe and exchange hushed words, offering fresh reeds cut at just the right angle for crisp lettering. One whispers that only reeds grown under a full moon produce the most supple quills, an idea that divides local scholars, some dismissing it as superstition, others praising its results in elegant script. You watch the scribe select a few reeds, running a knife down their shafts, and marvel at the precision required for such simple tools. At the courtyard's edge, children play a game of write and guess, scratching letters into sand with sticks and challenging each other to read aloud the shapes left behind. Laughter ripples through the air as an errant wind scatters the lines, and they scurry to redraw them. You crouch to join in briefly, leaving your own mark, a small arse that looks more like an unfinished stick figure, but they cheer your effort nonetheless. Above, a carved relief on a stone lintel depicts a heroic figure holding a scroll inscribed with symbols remarkably like those you witness below. The carving's weathered edges make some letters difficult to discern, sparking debate among visiting scholars over whether the relief predates the official adoption of the alphabet or commemorates an early experiment in writing. You imagine those sculptors peering over scribes' shoulders, preserving a moment when symbols first leapt from mind to medium. As the sun dips lower, apprentices begin to close their wax tablets, stacking them neatly and covering new letters with soft cloths. The master scribe extinguishes a nearby oil lamp, its last flicker casting dancing shadows across the courtyard. You take a final look at the tools of this nascent intellectual revolution, reed pens, wax tablets, and fired clay, and feel a profound sense of participation in a turning point of human history. You tuck a small clay shard etched with a clear alpha into your satchel, marveling at how this simple symbol will one day form the opening chord of epic tales like the Iliad. The courtyard falls silent save for the distant song of a night bird, and you stand for a moment, imagining countless voices once transcribing prayers, laws, and poems in these very spots. The alphabet's birth here feels less like dry invention and more like a collective gasp, a shared leap toward permanence in a fleeting world. You step carefully onto the gangplank of a stout merchant vessel moored at Olympia's harbor, its wooden planks worn smooth by countless footsteps. The deck sways gently beneath your sandals, and the salty tang of Ionian sea air fills your lungs. All around you, sailors jab at hefty ropes, knotting coils with practiced ease, while barrels of honey drip golden rivulets on creaking timbers. You inhale deep, tasting salt and beeswax, and realize that in moments you'll join this floating microcosm of commerce bound for Phocia. Amphorae line the deck in neat rows, their clay surfaces painted with glossy streaks of red and black, symbols marking their origin and intended destination. You run a finger along a painted griffin, its eye still vivid as if it might leap from the pottery. A mainstream fact comes to mind: Greek merchant ships of this era could carry up to 100 amphorae, balancing cargo and seaworthiness, enabling expanding trade networks across the Mediterranean. Sailors shout over the creak of masts being raised, their voices blending with the gulls' cries as the gangplank is hauled aboard. A burly skipper with a sun-leathered face and a trident-shaped tattoo greets you. He winks and says the wine holds better than his uncle after a night of symposium. You chuckle at the comparison, picturing your own uncle's loud snoring. Below deck, casks of salted fish lie stacked next to crates of figs. Their brine scent mingles with the wine's fruity aroma. A honey merchant, his tunic smeared with sticky drips, offers you a taste, crystallized comb that cracks between your teeth like brittle amber. The sweetness floods your mouth, an echo of sun-drenched fields where bees buzz amid thyme blossoms. You ascend to the forecastle, where a young deckhand unfurls a linen sail stained with ochre dye. As they heave on ropes, you feel the ship give a gentle lurch, and the sail catches the wind with a hiss. The vessel begins to drift from the quay, past fishermen casting nets into rippling water. You watch shimmering scales flash beneath the waves, wondering if any of those fish will end up on your next Greek banquet platter. Scholars debate whether early navigation relied more on coastal landmarks or celestial cues, but here you sense sailors watch both sea spray and stars with equal vigilance. The sea swells lightly, and the sound of water lapping against hull boards offers a soothing rhythm. You lean on the rail, legs dangling above foaming waves, and the breeze whips through your hair. A fringe tidbit surfaces. Some captains rub crushed snail shells into rope fibers to keep them supple and resistant to rot, believing the shell's ground calcium prevents mildew, a practice whispered among mariners more for tradition than proven durability. Below deck, you glimpse cargo holds where sacks of dried lentils nestle next to barrels of salted cheese, each item destined for eager markets in Phocia's bustling agora. You imagine traders there haggling over spice-laced honey and rare purple dye extracted from murex snails. The captain peers down through a hatch and announces that favorable winds will carry you past Aegina by nightfall. You smile, thinking of the island's famed naval power, and reflect how trade and military strength often intertwined, fueling both prosperity and rivalry. As the ship clears the harbor mouth, you climb a ladder to the crow's nest, heart pounding in your chest. The view broadens, olive groves clinging to cliffs, whitewashed farms dotting green hills, and distant columns of temple ruins rising like ghostly sentinels. You feel both exhilarated and small, reminded that this vessel is but a tiny speck on the vast Mediterranean canvas. Sunlight glints off water like scattered gemstones, and a faint chorus of monks chanting at a seaside monastery drifts on the breeze, lending an almost mystical air to the voyage. Back on deck, you join the crew hauling ropes to adjust the mainsail. The work is brisk and demanding, muscles straining under the sun's glare. Sweat beads at your hairline, and you wipe it away with a salt-stiffened wrist. A sailor shouts directions, you tug with all your might, surprised at how satisfying the rope's pull feels in calloused hands. Nearby, another mariner attaches a small clay flask filled with seawater to the mast, an improvised barometer believed to predict storms when waves sloshed inside, a tip passed down from Phoenician traders who once dominated these waters. Lunch follows, flatbread dipped in olive oil and crumbled goat cheese, eaten on benches carved into the deck's railing. You savor the creamy tang, washing it down with diluted wine that warms your throat. The cook passes around a steaming bowl of lentil broth, its aroma earthy and faintly peppered with cumin. You lift a spoonful, noting how basic ingredients combine to nourish both body and stoic spirit of those at sea. Afternoon light gilds the waves as you settle near the helm, watching the helmsman guide the ship with a long oar acting as a tiller. He hums a simple melody punctuated by the slap of waves, fingers dancing over knots tied in decorative macrame patterns. You strike up a conversation, asking about his home in Miletus. He recalls marketplaces alive with traders from Egypt and Lydia, exchanging tales of pharaohs and foreign courts. His eyes sparkle as he describes spices that smell of distant deserts, an intoxicating lure for any merchant's dreams. As the sun lowers, you notice the first offshore buoy marked with painted symbols, a warning of shallow reefs. Sailors heed these beacons to avoid wrecks, for a ship's cargo is only as safe as the captain's seamanship. You peek overboard and see shapes moving just beneath the surface, possibly sea turtles gliding toward warmer currents. You recall reading that early mariners believed turtles guided ships to hidden islands, a belief that may have influenced routes chosen by traders centuries later. Dusk brings a cooler breeze. Lanterns are lit and hung from spars, their amber glow dancing on the low clouds gathering in the west. You lean against the rail, swaying gently as the deck hums with creaks and murmurs. A sailor offers you a small pipe stuffed with dried herbs. Lean clouds swirl upward as you hold it between finger and thumb. The taste is smoky and sweet, a fleeting indulgence that feels oddly comforting in the vast openness of the sea. Analysis of the horizon reveals Phocaea's silhouette, a crescent of hills descending into a sheltered harbor. You sense the ship's prow tipping upward as land draws near. Flocks of seabirds were around rocky outcrops, dipping to fish in algae-streaked coves. You ready your satchel, checking that your olive-wood fragment and clay alpha shard are secure. Tomorrow, these goods and tales of distant lands will cross from deck to dock, transforming idle gossip into valuable information. As the vessel glides into calm waters of the bay, sailors begin coiling sails and dropping anchor. You step onto the gangplank again, the solid stone dock reassuring beneath your feet. Honey-stained amphorae and wine jars are unloaded and stacked beside a marketplace stall already crowded with eager buyers. Merchants hail your arrival, voices rising in a welcoming chorus that blends curiosity and commerce. You look back at the ship's mast, its rigging still swaying gently, and feel a sense of connection to the sea's timeless rhythms. The rising tide of Mediterranean trade has borne you here, a traveler carrying cargo, gossip, and dreams. You inhale deep, tasting salt, honey, and possibility, and step forward to join the next chapter of exchange, where stories transform into currency and every new acquaintance might become a trading partner, a friend, or a rival. You tread quietly through a narrow stone alley lit only by flickering oil lamps, the air thick with anticipation and the faint scent of wild herbs. Tonight, the Thesmophoria awaits, a secret women's festival held deep within a grove of ancient oaks where only the initiated may enter. You slip behind a group of women dressed in saffron robes, their bare feet silent on the earthen path. A mainstream practice ripples through your mind. The Thesmophoria honors Demeter and Persephone, celebrating fertility and the cycle of life by ritually sharing secrets and exchanging small tokens of grain. At the grove's edge, a low wooden fence marks the boundary. Only women who have borne children or remain maidens invited by priestesses may cross this threshold. As you step through, The air shifts, voices drop to hushed tones, laughter muted beneath a canopy of leaves. Lanterns carved from hollowed gourds cast a warm glow, revealing circular pits in the ground partially filled with clay tablets inscribed in local scripts. A fringe practice you catch sight of, some revelers carve love charms onto those tablets, tiny phallic symbols and entwined initials intended to ensure marital harmony. It's said these charms sometimes backfire, summoning rather than sweetening passion. Inside the grove, benches carved from living roots encircle a central altar heaped with barley, pomegranates, and small braziers of smoldering rue. Women seated there whisper prayers and secrets, each confession believed to cleanse the communal spirit. You sense a bond stronger than any public ceremony. This festival's power lies in its intimacy. A few women pass small woven baskets containing smeared cakes shaped like pigs, invoking Demeter's symbol. You taste one, dense, earthy barley fused with honey and oil, its shape honoring the boar that once protected Demeter's herds. Nearby, a trio of priestesses moves in a slow, measured dance as they chant a soft, rhythmic refrain. Their arms rise and fall like waves, mantles trailing in dusty ochre patterns. A fringe tidbit drifts into your awareness. Some tribes wear strands of snaky hair, real or woven from flax, as a symbol of transformation, linking Persephone's descent to the underworld with her return to light. You brush your hand against a sister's tunic and feel the tiny scales of metallic thread woven into the fabric, a hidden nod to serpents and renewal. The circle tightens as women share jars of seasoned wine. They sip sparingly, protecting both sobriety and secrecy. Conversation threads from fertility rites to private grievances. You overhear one lamenting a sibling's broken marriage, another celebrating her son's first steps. A few speak of offering their newborn's umbilical cord wrapped in oil-scented linen at the altar, believing the ritual blesses both child and fields. Scholars debate whether this charred linen practice predated Greek colonization or was borrowed from Anatolian neighbors, but here it feels like an age-old truth passed mouth to ear. You watch as an elder priestess crushes a handful of pomegranate seeds, letting their juice drip onto the ground in a quiet libation. Each seed represents a soul's journey, some to be lost, some to return. She speaks softly of Persephone's time in Hades, of seasons forced into cycles of abundance and famine. You listen, heart heavy and hopeful, imagining those crimson droplets nourishing unseen roots beneath your feet. Beyond the dancing priestesses, women file into small, candlelit chambers where they inscribe vows on clay discs. One young bride-to-be grinds crushed laurel into the soft clay before carving her name, believing the laurel will protect her marriage. Nearby, a widow smooths the surface of her tablet, inscribing wishes for her children's futures. These tokens will be hidden in concealed groves, only to be uncovered on the next Thesmophoria, an exchange marking both continuity and renewal across generations. Suddenly, a hush falls as a woman steps forward holding a slender reed flute. She plays a haunting melody, notes wavering like autumn winds through desolate fields. A fringe custom reveals itself. Some villages believe the music summons the spirits of ancestors to witness and bless their gathering. You feel goose flesh along your arms as distant voices seem to echo in your mind, each note carrying echoes of lost mothers and daughters. A trumpet blast echoes faintly from beyond the grove, an echo of public Dionysian celebrations, then fades into the night. Within this secret space, women raise their voices together, chanting a lullaby for Demeter's daughter, weaving loss and hope into one seamless hymn. You join softly, marveling at the collective strength in their unity, a ritual shaped by sorrow and joy alike. Afterward, women share bread dipped in honey wine, passing bowls in solemn procession. The mixture sparkles in the lamplight, and you sip, feeling sweetness and warmth spread through your chest. When the last bowl empties, the elder priestess beckons you forward. She presses a sprig of marjoram into your hand, an herb said to guarantee dreams of reconciliation with estranged loved ones. You tuck it into your cloak, heart swelled by the gift's quiet power. As dawn's first light brushes the horizon, the group rises. Women remove tokens from beneath robes, tiny wooden figurines painted with symbols of life and death. They cast these into a shallow pit, then cover them with earth and wildflowers, dedicating the offerings to the unseen forces of fertility. The scent of disturbed soil mingles with marjoram and rue, creating an earthy perfume that clings to you long after the grove falls silent. You step back through the threshold, leaving the whispers and secrets behind. The olive-strewn path awaits, silent under early birdsong. In your hand, the pomegranate-stained clay tablet feels heavy with shared confidences and hidden promises. You sense that these secret rites, woven from private voices, are as powerful as any public festival, perhaps more so, because they bind the community in ways that echo far beyond the grove's walls. Stepping onto the open road, you adjust your cloak and look back at the moonlit grove, its shadows retreating with the coming sun. A final fringe detail flickers into your mind. Some women claim that tokens left here on previous nights sometimes reappear in nearby homes, mystery scholars can't fully explain. You smile, imagining the pomegranate seed sprouting dreams in unsuspecting households. With the night's hush still humming in your ears, you head toward dawn, carrying secrets older than any stone monument. You step onto the well-worn path as dusk's violet glow drapes the sanctuary in soft shadows, your cloak settling around your shoulders like a familiar embrace. The air hums with lingering incense and faint cheers from the colonnade, now quieted into murmurs of departing pilgrims. Ahead, the moon rises pale and assured above the olive groves, its light weaving silver threads across stone altars and fallen petals. You draw your satchel close, feeling the weight of the olive-wood fragment, celery sprig, and the clay alpha shard, each a talisman of the wonders you've witnessed. A mainstream fact settles in your mind. In ancient Greece, dusk marked both the end of public rituals and the beginning of private vows, as offerings by torchlight bridged mortal and divine realms. You pause at the threshold of the sacred precinct, noting that a small fire flickers at the base of a pillar where worshippers leave oil lamps to guide spirits home. The flame's tremor mirrors your own pulse, steady yet alive with emotion. Beyond the pillar, a cluster of travelers from distant city-states gather their belongings beside overturned amphorae and empty garlands. You overhear one praising Olympia's unity, another lamenting that torchlit games will unfurl again in only 4 years. Some debate whether the 4-year cycle originated to honor lunar phases or to align with harvest schedules, a subtle argument that persists in dusty libraries and seaside symposiums alike. Here, however, the rhythm feels sacred, calibrated to both moonlight and olive harvests. A fringed tidbit surfaces as you follow a narrow corridor lined with votive carvings. Some pilgrims slip tiny clay tablets into crevices beneath column bases, believing future visitors will uncover them and relay their stories to gods unseen. You find one such recess and slip your own tablet inside, carving a small R before pressing it gently into place. The cool clay drinks your initials, holding them in quiet trust. Soft laughter echoes ahead, and you arrive at a low stone bench where a few torchbearers extinguish their flames in oil-filled basins. You crouch beside them, watching smoke curl upward like ghostly ribbons. One bearer smiles and nudges you toward a bowl of spiced wine infused with honey and mint. With a gentle nod of thanks, you sip. Warmth blooms across your chest, mingling with mint's crisp bite and honey's deep sweetness. Scholars still discuss whether mingling mint in libations began as medicinal practice or purely for flavor. Here, it tastes like both remedy and reward. You rise and wander toward the grove's edge, where olive branches arch overhead, their leaves whispering secrets in the night breeze. Under a marble arch, a lone poet recites a final fragment of verse, words drifting like petals. When moon and oil and mortal breath align, the soul remembers depths of ancient time. You lean against the arch, letting those words settle like gentle rainfall on your mind. Across the courtyard, a small shrine holds the final offerings of the day, pomegranate halves split open to reveal jewel-like seeds, plates of barley cakes, and intricately braided wreaths of celery and olive leaves. Each item glows in torchlight, a testament to human hope and divine favor. You reach out to touch a wreath, its damp leaves slightly chilled, and marvel that such simple offerings can carry so much longing. A sudden rustle draws your gaze to a grouping of shadows near a worn relief depicting Zeus's lightning bolt. There, a quiet ceremony unfolds. Two travelers press their hands together above a shared goblet, pledging friendship in the name of Olympian peace. You step closer, curious, and the officiant pours diluted wine onto the stone, a libation cementing bonds between far-flung strangers. Some argue that these spontaneous pacts under moonlight held more weight than treaties carved in marble, an idea that still fascinates modern scholars studying ancient diplomacy. As midnight approaches, you meander back through the sanctuary's outer gates, where olive garlands wilt in dim niches and stray petals drift on the ground like pale confetti. A cool breeze stirs sand in the peristyle, and you inhale the mingled scents of damp earth and ancient stone. You sense, more than see, the guardian deities tucking the site to rest, a final chorus of crickets, a ripple of owl wings overhead, and the hush that follows on sacred ground. At the edge of the sacred precinct, you pause one last time. Above, the moon reigns luminous, its reflection dancing on the ink-dark sky. The sanctuary's marble columns stand silent, witnesses to your journey through spectacle, politics, worship, and hidden lives. You press your palm against the cool surface of the final column and promise to carry these memories into your world, with voices hushed as though not to disturb the spirits lingering here. With steady breath, you turn and step onto the path leading home, each footfall soft against packed dust. Behind you, torchlight fades to darkness. Before you, the promise of dawn beckons. You tuck your cloak tighter, heart full of images that will shape your dreams, and, perhaps, those you share when morning arrives. Night's velvet veil deepens around you, and all the day's vibrant colors soften into muted hues. You walk slowly now, each step unfurling as a quiet exhale. The olive trees that once rustled with life become hushed sentinels, their silhouettes graceful against the star-scattered sky. Your heart, which raced with the thunder of chariots and the thrill of clandestine rites, settles into a gentle rhythm matching the chorus of distant crickets. Breathe in the cool night air, scented faintly with pine resin and lingering incense. Feel the gentle weight of your satchel, the fragments of clay and wood tucked close, as a comforting reminder of ancient whispers now woven into your own story. Let your thoughts drift, one by one, like leaves carried downstream, the crowd's roar fading into a tender memory, the chant of priestesses dissolving into a soft chant within your mind. Imagine the moonlight guiding you home, illuminating each olive line turn in silvery arcs. Allow the scent of crushed herbs and honeyed wine to linger at the edges of your senses, a fragrant echo of rituals devoted to gods and mortals alike. Each aroma, each faint echo, becomes a lullaby for your fading thoughts. Rest comes as naturally as a breeze across olive boughs. Your eyelids grow heavy, images of torchlit altars and marble columns drift into dreams. The divine hush of Olympia, including its hidden stories and whispered promises, settles around you like a silken blanket. Now, release the day's final breath and exhale into serene darkness. Tomorrow's dawn can wait. Tonight, your journey through ancient Greece glides into quiet repose.